Welcome to Impact Innovations, where bold ideas meet real-world solutions. Join our host, Dr. Angela Gustus, as she dives in deep with thought leaders, change agents, and innovators who are making waves and moving mountains. So buckle up. Let's get ready to laugh, be inspired, and make an impact together.
Cory McCray is a husband, father of four, and proud son of Baltimore, whose journey from electrical apprentice to journeyman electrician, entrepreneur, and public official in the state of Maryland has shaped every chapter of his life. A union electrician by trade, he is the only member of Maryland's legislature to have completed a registered apprenticeship, bringing a working-class lens to policy and public service. As the author of The Apprenticeship That Saved My Life, McCray shares a deeply personal story of exposure, access, and second chances, and the people who helped him see what was possible before he saw it for himself. His work in public life has led to the passage of more than 100 bills focused on education, workforce development, and economic justice. But at his core, he remains grounded in the values that shaped him: hard work, community, and the belief that no one should be counted out.
Well, thank you as always, Charity. I really appreciate you. And I cannot say how excited. I have had the pleasure of interacting with you and having breakfast with you and everything. To have Senator Cory McCray with us today is just absolutely so exciting. And hearing about your book getting ready to come out, like, oh my gosh, to have you as a part of our podcast, I'm honored to be able to sit down and talk to you today. So welcome to Impact Innovations. Thank you for spending this morning with us. It really, truly means the world to me.
Angela, it means the world to me, and I'm so excited to be able to be here.
Awesome. So I just want to jump right in. Let's just do this. So the first thing that I think is so powerful is you always present as a dad, as a husband, as a father of your four kids and everything. Like, that's even on social media, family is number one. And I know that for a lot of people, how do you balance family and business and being a part of the government and making a decision maker for our state? How do you balance that and keep your role in your family number one?
I really, really deeply appreciate that. I think that it's a great amount of time management. I always tell folks, especially when I'm speaking to these young people, I'm like, first, the greatest asset that you have is your time.
Yes.
And I said, I'm mindful of who I spend my time with, and I remind them that I want to be there with them.
Oh, wow.
And that way they understand the importance. And I choose. I'm not around everybody. I'm not spending my time in every place. And I'm just grateful that, you lifted up one of the most important things to me, which is the family. I just have to get this right. We can do all this stuff that we're doing, but if we do not get that right, if we do not raise good human beings to contribute, especially at this moment that we're in right now.
Yeah.
That's the most important job that I have as a dad, as a husband, to make sure, because I think that that's what breaking the generational cycle looks like. Just making sure that we can contribute in a different type of way.
That is so awesome. And it's so true. And when you say spend time, people use that term all the time, like, oh, I'm going to spend time doing this, or I'm, whatever. But it literally, you are spending, like you spend money, you spend time. There are 168 hours in the week.
Yep.
I try to sleep about 56 of them.
Okay.
That leaves me with 112.
Yep.
What am I going to do with that 112 to really make the difference?
That's how you got to look at it. That's how you got to look at it.
Yeah, and you only have that 112, whether you're a billionaire or not. You still only have that 112. So I love that that's your philosophy around that. So, I really want to talk a lot about your story because I just feel like your story is so impactful. It's different, and you're different. And I think that's why people love you, because and I want to be politically correct, no pun intended, but like, people, when they view a politician, when they view a state senator, they're just like, they're this, untouchable person, or their life has been so very different, or they always went to all the elite schools and all those things, which is true. And it's no judgment against people like that. But I think one of the things that draws people, because you are Cory, you know what I mean? Like every time I've interacted with you, it's just like, hey, what's up? How you doing, fam? This, that, you're you, and you've never lost that. Even as I've seen you grow in your career from a political perspective, you're still that guy. And so your story is so huge. So I know that the book is getting ready to drop. We are super excited to be a part of, the media push behind it, because, I can't wait to get my copy and read it. I'm so super excited. But like, number one, why now with the book? But also, like, I love to hear your story. Like, how did you really, like, what was that turning point for you to really move into the apprenticeship and those things? So if you could just sort of talk about the book and the story behind it, that would be awesome.
You hit a couple points, and I'm going to try to lean in on some of them. The first one that you talked about was just a different type of elected official. And I try to remind folks that my attitude towards politics was they leave me alone, I leave them alone. And I had that type of attitude probably till my mid to late 20s. So like I didn't vote. I always tell folks that my wife, Demetra, I've known her since she was 17 years of age. And as soon as she turned 18, she went out and voted. And I just was like, I didn't want to participate in the process. And one of the things that I realized was that there are a couple ways that we can change trajectory in our neighborhoods. One of them, I think, is teaching people about financial literacy and how to build generational wealth.
Oh, yeah.
But the second one is removing the arbitrary barriers that are in statute and local, state, and federal laws that are barriers for folks just like me and you that are in the zip codes that are deeply impacted. And I'll give you examples of things that I'm talking about, and then I'll unpack what you talked about in reference to the story. When we did voting rights, 40,000 people that were on parole or probation did not have the right to vote in the state of Maryland until 2016.
Wow.
But when we look at zip codes, 2 zip codes that are in the city of Baltimore, 21210 only had 10 people in that specific zip code on parole or probation. Take a zip code that I represent, 21213, 937. So when we look at the correlation between 937 and 10, and we ask ourselves, why don't we have supermarkets in our neighborhoods? Why do we have high vacancy with dilapidated housing? Why do some of our schoolhouses look in a condition? Why are we concentrated with liquor stores and things of that nature? And you say elected officials pay attention to everybody. That's not true. They pay attention to people that vote and concentrations of pockets that can vote. And that's what I try my best to remember. And that's what I try to change and make sure that we educate folks about those types of things. When we look at another reason is when we dig into the liquor stores and how many there are, when you look at that, Angela, in that zip code from North Avenue down to McElderry Park or to north to south, east to west, Luzerne and Central Avenue, there are 23 liquor stores in a 1 mile radius. 23 in a 1 mile radius. And one of the things is that we just don't always know our power. So when you think about 23, the city of Baltimore, except for in East Baltimore, the boundaries that I told you about, is the only jurisdiction that have liquor stores open for 20 out of 24 hours. This does not happen in Baltimore County. This does not happen in Anne Arundel County, Howard County, or et cetera, et cetera. But if you go into those areas in North Avenue to McElderry, Luzerne to Central, you'll see that we then changed that because we started to understand what power looks like. We don't have to do this. And I tell folks, especially the mental of our young folks, when we think about Demetria, she grew up in Oliver. So imagine if she went to middle school at Lily Mae Carroll. She would have had to walk past 3 liquor stores that were open prior to her even having a school bell ring. And what is the message that we're sending to our young scholars? So I just say, why am I doing this work? Because I know the arbitrary barriers. I live the arbitrary barriers, and I now understand and have a certain level of consciousness to say I want to contribute to a better place, not for myself, but for all folks that are within this space.
Wow.
But then you speak about the story. And the story is, to some degree, a Baltimore story. It's an urban jurisdiction story. It's a story of a lot of young men, young women that's just trying their best to figure their way out. I grew up in Baltimore. I graduated from a school, Fairmont Harford, right there, Harford and 25th. And like a lot of young men, a lot of young women, I was at a crossroad. And I was blessed because I had a mom that just didn't give up on her son. And I can remember my mom reaching out to the Maryland Department of Labor and saying, send me every apprenticeship program in the state of Maryland.
Wow.
And then saying, Cory, go fill out applications at these respective programs. And luckily, I was accepted into the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers Local 24's program. But Angela, as I was accepted into that program, I was in disbelief. Certain things I just didn't have an understanding of. I was asking the question 20 years ago, why would they pay me $12 an hour? Don't know anything about electric work, don't know anything about that. And then they're saying, all you have to do is show up on time, have a good attitude, and make sure you're ready to learn. They were then the next year going to pay me $15 an hour. The year after that, $18 an hour. So I saw what the trajectory of the wage scale looked like over a 5-year period. I thought they were hustling me. I thought that there was some type of gimmick. I said,
Like,
well,
it's too good to be true.
This is too good to be true. And then why didn't I have this subset of information earlier than what we have at this moment? But I realized that there are employer models. So every employer has different models. This employer realizing that if they have a trained workforce, the turnover won't be so high. So we'll pay the wages from that standpoint. I was like, well, why wouldn't everybody do something like this? And then I realized, Cory, you're successful. I went through that apprenticeship, and what it did was it removed me out of the full blocks that I was so used to. And it then opened me up to the world that I had never seen or interacted or interfaced with folks before. I tell people that I never got on a plane till I was 25. I never left the country till I was 30. And I realized what exposure and access can do to myself, but more importantly, the folks that are around me. When I think about that, I then saw folks that were entrepreneurs. So they were electricians, but they also had houses, corner stores, things of that nature. I said, that person is no smarter than me, Angela. I said, I can do exactly what they're doing.
Yeah.
I looked while I was going through, I purchased my first home at 20. I then purchased my second home at 21, purchased the third one at 22, every year, because I was always taught, I've been hustling all my life.
Yes.
And I know how to do it. So what happens is every year when we were getting that incremental wage that I was talking to you about, folks was out here buying Lexuses, Lincolns, things of that nature, and getting car payments. I would buy a house. So I would save that money and buy a house. And the streets had taught me, Angela, if you get a mortgage for something for $500, you can do something for $700. Like, that's hustling. Like, that's what you do. I did not know that houses appreciate because nobody had taught me. I did not understand the tax shelter because nobody had taught me. So these are fundamental understandings. And this is why I go back to financial literacy that I just wasn't aware of because no one in my family was having this level of a discussion. And it's a very important discussion. And there came a point, and you ask about, like, when does this trigger, when does this political space happen? I just look up and I say to myself, how are you so lucky after you've been through everything that you've been through and you're in this space where you've graduated from this apprenticeship, you now have investment income, and you can make decisions that you want to make, and you're starting to have a family. And then I just asked the question, like, life ain't about me winning. And early on I was chasing money, but the real truth and measure of success is, like, how many people can you bring across that finish line with you? So every day I wake up, I'm trying my best to move as many people. I don't care if you get a yard, I don't care if you get 3 yards, but we're going to try our best to move it from that space. I'll stop talking because I want to make sure see if you have any questions.
Oh my gosh,
but,
this is amazing. And what you're talking about is so important. And, like, you're the real deal politician, not the politician that's in it just for the name, just for the whatever. It's like you really see that the political space is that way that you can impact so many more people. And that is so amazing. And it's a story that people need to understand because people think that these decisions and things that happen during the General Assembly, they're just these random, people that don't really know, and they're just making these decisions, making these laws, making these things happen. But there are people like you that are a part of the General Assembly that really do really care about the community and have been a part of the community and want to really be a part of change. And that is absolutely amazing. And kudos to mom. Like, you know, I mean, because the thing is, and one thing I've known about Baltimore is there are resources for pretty much everything you can imagine, right? But if you don't know where to find them, you know, so it's like for mom to just be like, you know what, let me find some stuff to help my son and get him involved in everything. But also for you to be receiving that as well. Like that's still, you know, mom did a big part, but you did too, because sometimes we can tell our kids all day long, I want you to do X, Y, and Z. But that says a lot about your relationship with your mom that you are like, yes, ma'am, you know, because sometimes our young folks don't always recognize that, you know, like now that we're the parents, that we actually kind of know something. You know what I mean? And so, you know, how we educate our parents is also trickles down to how we're able to impact our kids. Because it's the parents that are going to teach those lessons. It's the parents that are going to be those role models. And so the more that we can help the parents, we can also help the children. And I mean, that's huge. And thank you for your transparency to talk about the fact that, you know what, when you were younger, you were not a voter. It's not like you know,
I tell them they can look me up in the van
old
file and they'll see like, oh wow, Cory didn't like this wasn't like my dream of being in the second grade and going to this. There's an assignment here and we have to get in front of it. Angela, if I can, I just want to lean in on a couple points that you recognize. So there are points that I write about in the book, and I speak about mentorship, and I think about like the target audience for this book. When I think about the students, most important audience, but I think about all the guidance counselors, all the teachers, the parents, the mentors that are framing and helping direct these young scholars. And I'm thinking like, you had this 20 years of knowledge capture, and then you talked about this pivotal point where you have to be at a space where you receive it. The mom can do, mom, dad, mentor, guys can do all they want. But imagine if you're there, and I lay this out. So I'm going to speak about two things. I speak about one of my friends who, after I graduated from the apprenticeship, had given me a call. And I lay out his story and the challenges that he had with his story. And I knew he was at a crossroad. And Angela, I could have did more. I wasn't in the mindset to understand that I was a role model at that moment. And he got through the program. While it took me 5 years, it took him about 8, 9 years to get through it. So he figured his way out, but I could have did more. And I'm in a space right now where that's why I'm doing more. I realized at that moment, hey, how many of them can we bring? How many can we make sure? Then when you think about the mom, and what was that moment where it clicks? Because these are short windows. These are very short windows, and the timing has to be right. Angela, I tell folks that my mom, I'm incarcerated for 10 months out this space, out in Western Maryland at that time. And I get home, and it's 30 days. I'm not even home for 30 days, and I find myself over the adult system in the jail system. So I'm charged as an adult, home at the 30 days, this 10-month incarceration as a juvenile, and I'm back in this space. And when we think about this window, and I'm bringing my mom back into this piece, because when I went in there that second time as charged as an adult, I could just remember just hurting her so much. I could see the pain in her face, and I'm just saying, like, just give up on me. I'm gone. Like, it's no coming back from where I'm at. And my mom, Angela, she says to me, and she's visiting me while I'm in this over Baltimore City Jail, and I'm there, and she says, Cory, I'm gonna keep believing in you until you start believing in yourself.
Oh, come on now.
And I remember I came home, and I wanted to do right. And what happens is if you keep going back to the same circumstances, you're going to get the same outcome. So that's why I keep talking about this 4 blocks that I was so familiar with. I'm hanging out with the same people. I'm in the same neighborhood doing the same thing, and there's no room for opportunity. There's no new information that I'm grabbing at this time. But that moment, I just wanted to stop hurting my mother. And that's why I felt as though I'm moving in that way where I then listen to her advice and go fill out those applications. I don't know if that was going to last for 2 months. I don't know if it was going to last for 3 months. I don't know if it was going to last for 6 months. But there was that small window that interjected itself and said, Cory, if you put one foot in front of the other, this thing may work out. I tell you, I go back to that 5-year wage scale because I could then say, it wasn't like I wasn't smart. It was just I was trying to figure it out under the circumstances. But then saying, this is what happens in year 2. This is what happens in year 3. And them clearly laying it out. And I'm just like, this is too good to be true. So I'm in my moment. I'm trying to shift the right direction. But you're also saying I can if I do these things. And I can now see at least 5 years.
And, so many of our young people can't see beyond today or tomorrow. And just something as simple as having a piece of paper that lays out 5 years. That is huge because it's like, oh, that's like a roadmap, right? But I wanna circle back to something that you said that I think is so super, super powerful. You just talked about how, you wish you could have been there differently for your friend that was also going through the program. And I think that's a piece that our young folks don't recognize, that when they're going through, but yet trying to grow, that people are watching them, and it's not necessarily your little brother or your little cousin. It may be someone who's your same age that's looking at you like, brother, you doing your thing. Wait a minute. Let me see how I can do that. And sometimes we don't realize the impact we're having just by moving. It may not be anything, and so when I did my dissertation work, I had the privilege of talking to all of these women who are leaders in the human services space. So, CEOs, presidents of like major nonprofits and things of that sort. And it's funny that you bring up mentorship, because one of the things that I was looking to understand is what were those components that helped them to ascend in their career. And every woman I talked to talked about mentorship and the importance of mentorship. And, they talked about mentorship. They talked about self-evaluation, like really genuinely understanding who you are and how you deal with your stuff, your muck, right? Because you have to deal with that in order to keep moving, right? And then, we talked about, everybody talks about communication. Like, how do we communicate with each other? How do we communicate our theories, our vision, all those different things. And then the last piece is business acumen, which isn't as applicable, but sort of is, because at the end of the day, the apprenticeship is teaching you the skills that you need to move forward. So it's like all of those pieces are even a part of your story, where it's like, I had mentors. I learned how to talk about my vision and what I was trying to do and where I'm trying to go. And, the other thing that I would love to hear from you, there's something that, and I talk about this a lot when I do public speaking, especially when I talk to young people. I talk about this thing that I heard T.D. Jakes talk about during an interview he did with Oprah. And he talked about giraffes and turtles and how, sometimes you're in a space where you're the giraffe. And so you can see above the trees, you can see, you can see and have a vision that sometimes the turtles around you just physically just can't see. And so, and Tyler Perry tells his story about how his mom was like, stop trying to do these little plays. Like, I love you, baby, but like, go get yourself a good government job, or I think it was the phone company or whatever. So, having those turtles and those giraffes in your world really is a thing as you're growing in your career. And so using that analogy, how did you, because I can't imagine that you didn't have some turtles in your life where you were like, okay, I'm doing this apprenticeship. I'm growing, I'm home now. I'm trying to really, make sure that my mom is feeling good about where I'm going. I don't want to disappoint her. Like you have a clear vision of at minimum these next 5 years. How did you deal with the turtles? Because that's hard. Because sometimes those turtles are people you love, right? Where they just physically can't see what you see, and that's okay. But how do you deal with the turtles when you have such an amazing vision? Because I think that our young people need to understand, how do you deal with that?
I did a chapter on mentors, and I want to unpack that a little bit, and then I'm going to move into just the mindset that I have at this moment. I try my best because I always would get the question, who was your mentors when you were growing up? You must have, and I would always kind of say, like, I really didn't have mentors. I kind of read at some point, but I realized, Angela, I did have mentors. And they taught me the best way that they knew how. And what happens is I tell the story of my brother, and I tell the story of when I got my bike took. It's like my first real city interaction. You know, everything's real fun and games, but then somebody take your bike. So I can remember going to my brother, telling him, man, this kid down the street just took my bike. I need to go get my bike back. You going with me? And I can remember my brother making me fight this kid. Mm-hmm. And I can remember my brother watching me get my tail whipped once, twice, 3 times. But the lesson was, and I got my bike back, and I'm crying and I'm upset and I'm frustrated. And my brother's like, don't you ever let somebody take something away from you without fighting. Mm. And that sat on me. And I realized that like when I'm in the legislature, mm-hmm. I fight so hard because I know what's at stake. Like I fight so hard because I ain't letting nobody take nothing from me or my people. Mm-hmm. So I have to make sure that I amplify that piece of it. So I lean in and I thank him because he was teaching me the best way he knew how. Mm-hmm. Now, from a mentorship standpoint, it's plentiful from that standpoint. I can think about Dr. Draper, who's the CEO of the Afro.
Yeah.
I can think about Joe Haskins, who's was the former CEO of Harbor Bank.
Yep.
I can think about Theo Rogers. I can think about so many people that pour into me at this moment and realize my full potential. But when I was young, I had a constant disregard for myself, just a lack of empathy for myself. So how could I have empathy for others? Wow. And I can see the board so much more clear. So my mindset at this moment, because these folks are pouring into me, I have these different interactions. I've seen some things. I've been out this country to be able to see like what is the true potential. And that's all that I scream and I beg of these other young folks that were going through similar situations or may not understand how great they are. I tell folks that I stay in one of these schools or interacting with at least these young folks at least once or twice a week. Mm-hmm. And when I remind them, I'm going to go back to time. So after I tell them that I want to be with them, that I truly enjoy and humble to be able to share the space with them, I then say, and it's not in an egotistic way, I say to them, I'm $100 bill. I'm not the dollar bill that circulates everywhere. So like, and that's how I see you all. Realize your full potential. You can do anything that you put your mind to, but you have to have the right folks pouring into you, and you have to make sure, and I talked to them about money. I said, money ain't everything. Yeah. It's the relationship capital. Yeah. That's the capital that I'm seeking. That's the currency that I'm seeking. The ability to connect in a different type of way with others. How can I pour into people? How can I add value to others? Because you know what happens? It comes back to me twofold. That's how you get rich. That's how you move forward from there. But then you talked about the turtles and the giraffes. Angela, I didn't know this, but like the streets kind of teach you to pull away anyway. So you don't really interact with you. It's like you interact with your own. You don't move in a certain way. So I think that as I moved through the apprenticeship, I had like 3 or 4 folks that I kind of really interact, but I paid attention. So I watch so much. And in that book, as I talk, and I do this, I lean into a story and early in life, but then I speak to the stories that I'm going through it. And I talk about Ed Sheck. And I remember Ed Sheck, he taught me what a work ethic is. In reference to, nobody had taught me on time and showing up at 7 for a 7 a.m. job is not on time. Yeah. Show up at 6:45, show up at 6:30. Give it everything that you have because someone's always watching and they want the best people on their team. I talk about Frank Vaso in reference to just teaching me and helping me see from a family standpoint. Like I just didn't really always understand and be able to see things that's outside of. My mom just struggled so much and spent so much time away from the home trying to make sure that we had food, make sure that we had housing, make sure that the lights was on, that you didn't always get to see what does it look like when young folks are playing organized sports? Or what does it look like with educational opportunities outside of the schoolhouse? What does it look like when everybody's showing? Our vacation was the library from that standpoint. So like we didn't take vacations once a year, maybe that I see at this point now, but like our dream or our job was reading a book. Like that was your vacation and being able to get away from the certain circumstances that you were going through. So like with the giraffes and the turtles, I'm of a mindset where I know how to move and move very accordingly. If you're not adding the same level of energy, if it isn't a high level conversation, I'm going to go in a different direction because at the end of the day, I understand and respect my time.
Wow. That is probably one of the most different conversations around giraffes and turtles, but you hit such an important piece to it. because you really just made sure you surrounded yourself with other giraffes. And that's huge.
That's it.
That's huge.
That's it.
Like, so that way you don't have the noise of the turtle.
Yep.
You're just surrounding yourself. And that, I think, is such an important thing. I talked to my son about that. You know, he's 28 now. And, you know, and he's in a space where he's recognizing who he needs to be around. You know, I love you. You've been my friend since high school and everything. And I'm always going to love you. I'm always going to be there. But you're not my circle, you know, and just sort of understanding and having that discernment of who you can go play ball with versus who you talk about career with or family or relationships and those kinds of things, and understanding that. And I think that you drove home such a beautiful point that you really have to be cognizant of who you surround yourself with, and that they have to, like you said, bring the same type of energy to the conversation.
Can I just say this?
Yeah,
like,
please.
It's not lost on me that it's a privilege to be engaging in this conversation with you. You let me have this and I'm recognizing that, and I respect that, and that's why I'm here today. Like, I want to make sure, because you also have, this is equally us pouring into each other, and this is a consistent, and I don't mind, especially if I have young folks, and let's say the energy is off. I'll step in and say, hey, something's missing, and this is the type of conversation we should have, because sometimes folks may have their fear. And they may try to push their fear on you. And I'm like, hey, that's not the direction that I move. And I'll say, hey, here's how, because words are important, and how you frame words, what you say, what you think. And then I'll lean in and say, hey, here's some of my secrets. And so they may not be at the level, but they're also willing to be taught and say, hey, here's what I've learned in this small amount of time that I've been blessed to be on this earth. And this is how you should be positioning this conversation that we're having at this moment. And then they'll kind of adjust accordingly, because it's a mutual respect there. And they'll say, hey, like, you know what, Cory, I'm so glad that we're having this, because then, and it's like iron sharpens iron, so we're sharpening each other as we have it.
I remember one time I was speaking to a group of young people, and there's a young woman in the group, and she stood up to ask a question, and she said, well, if you're a turtle, are you always a turtle? And she looked defeated, like she was already acknowledged, or like she identified that she was a turtle. And I said to her, and it was funny, I literally paused and I was like, Lord, I need an answer, because I can't let, like, it was so clear. And literally I felt like just my Heavenly Father just downloaded, like, oh yeah, here you go, Bobo, because you can't mess this moment up. And so engaging in those conversations, and like I said to her, I was like, you know, we're all turtles in some way, shape, and form. You know, there are times like, and I'm very open about my weight loss journey. There are people that, you know, are like runners, and I'm just like, you going running? What? No, it's too hot out there. Why are you going running? Why don't you come on and chill with me and we sit and watch some TV? Like, you know what I mean? I am not that person that sees the vision of running, right? And so in that situation, I am a turtle for them. But recognizing, even when you are, you know, being honest with yourself, like, am I supporting this person or am I holding them back? Am I bringing my own stuff to the table, or am I really bringing the best of me to the table? And so, you know, that's an important piece to impart upon young people. Like, you know, try to be in it to win it with everybody as much as you can, so that you are never pulling somebody back or holding somebody back. Or recognizing that sometimes turtles are necessary, because you may have your head in the clouds and the turtle is the one that's just like, hey, you about to step on something. And you're like, oh, thanks. Good looking out, dude. You know what I mean? But to your point, it's really important to recognize who are turtles and who are giraffes, and surround yourself with people who are like-minded, who bring that same energy, that are trying to grow, you know, and you still are a leader, because the turtles can't see what you see, but you don't leave them behind. You still are a leader, and you still are moving everybody in the right direction and building that trust so that people will listen. And that's part of leadership. And you talked about it being a privilege. It's a privilege to be a leader. You know, yes, it's a calling. Yes, it's heavy, right? It's not an easy thing to do.
So true.
But it's a huge privilege. And we have to move in a way that acknowledges the privilege, so that we never become that person that doesn't pay attention to the turtles.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And like your example of, working with young people and respecting them and bringing them into the conversation and all those things, that's that part where you're always acknowledging the privilege of who you are and where you are and everything else. And, yeah, I mean, oh my gosh, we could talk forever. But anyway, I do want to shift a little bit and talk a little bit more about the political side of your career.
Yep.
You have helped pass now, tell everybody exactly how many years you've been in office, because you were a delegate initially and now you're a senator. So how many, let's put this in perspective, because passing 100 bills, it's a lot, but it's a whole lot because you have not been in office for 20, 30 years.
Nope.
So tell us.
Just finished my 11th session. My 11th session. And I tell folks, and I keep going back to these young people because I spend a lot of time around my young people. And I tell them that I'm humbled and I'm honored because when I'm explaining to them how many folks are in the Maryland State Senate in this body, I say I'm one of 47. And when you talk about the Maryland population, close to 6 million plus people, being one of 47, this unique opportunity for 4 years to be able to represent your people and do it in a space of excellence. I just want to come back and say, like, am I flawed? Yes. But you know what people recognize? Every day he wakes up, he tries his best to be better. And like, that's so important to me. So when you think about, we spoke about voting rights, minimum wage, public transportation, keeping libraries open, Black mental health. When you think about Black women's in reference to Black maternal health, when you think about so many of the issues, and I look at the General Assembly, I almost feel like they give me a free education. I feel like I'm going through an apprenticeship all over again.
Wow.
Imagine if you have all these subject matter expertise, and you can do all this brain dumping and all this information that you can get in a 90-day period. I'm like in heaven because I'm always trying my best to figure out, like, how can I grow and be a better person? This year we were dealing with DDA. And Angela, I found myself on the other end leading the negotiations.
Wow.
And what happens then is what my leadership style is, I want to take in as much information. So I sat down with the stakeholders. I sat down with the agency. I sat down with my colleagues in the opposite chamber in the House and took in all that information to be able to understand the different issues, some of the cuts that were being proposed, and be able to say, well, maybe that cut don't need to happen. This is too important. This impacts too many lives. But now I can sit in a room. I can have an articulate conversation about DD because of the college or degree that I actually went through, that apprenticeship that I get inside that General Assembly. So I love being there because of all this knowledge capture, all this information, and these vast amount of subjects that I'm fortunate to be able to learn for free.
Wow. I've never thought about it like that, but that's true because you all are fed a ton of information from all these different people through session, through, people testifying and all the things. So you really do get a full education on something and then have the responsibility, to take it all in and then make these huge decisions. I mean, the DDA conversation was heavy.
Self-direction, the providers, like these things that I was able to learn. But the most important thing, here's the winning secret. I'm going to give them the money secret right now.
Okay.
It's to be thoughtful in the decision. How do you take all that information and make a thoughtful decision that's prudent for state dollars, but also thoughtful of the people that's engaged and impacted, families that's impacted by the decisions that we make? And when I lead in that way, I always find myself on top.
That is huge. And taking the time to learn, that is significant. The CMAG and Associates team, we had the privilege of working with the workforce, the work group that was looking at social work licensure.
Okay.
And, and really help them to put together the final report that came over to legislation and to see how that information was used and discussed and decisions were made based on the work that we were able to do with that group was huge. And to know that there are people like you on the other side of that that are really genuinely taking it in, that this isn't just paper pushing, right? This is people that are really sitting and looking at, okay, this is what the needs are. These are the barriers. These are the challenges with the testing that's being done and all those different pieces. And, you know, knowing that there's an education there. And the more that you educate yourself, and I hear you talk about reading, you've talked about it a couple of times, and, you know, I follow you on social media and you're always talking about the different books that you're reading. And I have 100% bought quite a few books. Like you should be getting some kickback somewhere. Because, I mean, there are a lot of books that I've bought because I'm like, ooh, Cory read the book. Okay, let me find it. Let me put that in my cart. And so reading is so important and educating yourself is so important. And you're a lifelong learner, clearly. You know, you didn't call yourself that, but but you really are. Like, you're always learning and looking at opportunities to learn from other people, from situations, from the General Assembly, all those things. You're taking course all the time. You know, talk to young people for a second about the importance, you know, because again, going back to what you said, that 4-block radius, how your reading got you out, you know, in addition to the apprenticeship and all the other experiences that you had, but how your reading was your vacation. I mean, that's huge. Like, because people don't think about reading, and unfortunately, our young people don't read nearly as much as we used to. So if you could talk a little bit about the importance of reading and or just educating yourself with information so that you can grow.
Yep. I always say that history repeats itself. So the 3 spaces that I really try my best to stay in is leadership. So I love reading on leadership. I love reading about history because like I said, I think the history repeats itself. And then just like trying to figure out, I love reading about Black history, but more importantly, like not in the moment that we sit in today, but like the 1700s, the 1800s, the early 1900s. Who were those leaders that were leading in that moment when it was very scary times? Like your hotel or your business may get burnt down and no repercussions could take place. Like who was the A.G. Gastons? Who was the Herman Russells? Who was the Maggie Lena Walkers? The people that were starting banks when like it's still not enough Black banks, but like they were starting in the 1900s. Like that is such a dope experience, and just being able to say, I ain't got nothing to go through when I know that I know about these types of leaders and what they went through from there. But one of the things that I appreciate, and I think my colleagues appreciate, is when someone takes the time to put together that report that you were talking about on social workers. I believe that it's my responsibility to take in that information, read that information, and be able to understand, what did someone spend 90 days, 6 months putting together in order for me to make an informed decision? So I read everything that's typically touched my desk, especially during that 90 days, because it equips me with the tools to be able to have that articulate conversation with my peers and say, that's not why we can do this. Here's the thing. Here's the ramifications if we do this. They pointed that out on page 37. And,
I love it.
What happens is, my community has benefited from me reading, being able to see some of the paths that my colleagues, that's a nice way to put it, some paths that my colleagues have taken, and then being able to duplicate some of the paths. Because when you read it and you see, you be like, oh, I didn't know we could do that. Okay, all right, so here's something different that I can utilize to bring back to my folks. But one of the things that I tell these young folks too, like, just continue to digest as much information. I'm blessed. And the first event is being held September 29th, that evening at the main library, Angela. It's happening at the main library in Baltimore.
Wow.
And the reason why it's happening, I'm going to tell the story and then I'm going to let you get back to the questions.
No, please.
So I can remember I'm in elementary school, and during that time, our mayor was Kurt Smoke. And Kurt Smoke was the education man. Legend. Boss in his own right.
Oh my God.
And what happens is he had this program called the Race to Read. So this is why I keep
I
speaking.
remember that.
So Race to Read is in full effect. And I can remember my sister, she might have been in 3rd grade. She had read 99 books. I'm going to say it, Danielle, I read 100 books. And what
Okay.
happens is that we then got to go, like, this is a big deal. So imagine a kid growing up in his small neighborhood and get to go to the main library branch. This is a huge word. I ain't never been out of the city, but going to the main library branch was a big deal. And get this award and be able to get recognized by my city in the Race to Read program for the accomplishment that I did. And I can remember the Baltimore Sun must have did an article because my mom kept it. Stuart Sims is the state's attorney at that time, and he's huge, and he's got this little young guy in his arms at this program. We had just got acknowledged, just received rewards.
Wow.
So to be able to be there and reading 100 books, but at this moment, in about a month or 2 months, being able to sit in a chair after writing a book is probably one of the most surreal feelings. And I'm like living it each and every day. So just
Well, I can't tell you how excited I am. So there's one other thing I want to just sort of touch on real quick before we wrap up. You know, as a business leader and as an entrepreneur, in addition to the political work that you do, like, how do those two interface? Like, how does your business and the work that you do as a business owner and your political work, how do those really come together? How do they sort of help each other?
Yep.
Like the political side help the business side,
Yep.
and vice versa, from a growth perspective, you know, and that learning perspective.
I think my colleagues respect me because I can have a different type of conversation. I can have the conversation because I've actually lived the challenges and went through them, so I know what they look like, and I know what they look like for my people. I can also have the conversation of being a small business owner and not being the Home Depots, the Walmarts, but also understanding like the impact of the decisions that we make these days in our body on a local level, state level, and federal level of a person that's just trying to achieve that respective dream that they have in front of them of helping other people and saying, hey, I'm not sure we should go to that extent, or I'm not sure that we should go to that extent because it will have this type of impact on small business owners, and we should be cognizant and we should be conscious of this piece of, because we actually want them. We want to see them grow. We want to see them prosper, and we don't want to kind of saturate and make sure, because I think competition is a great thing.
Absolutely.
And what happens is when we're all sandwiched with like monopolies or just one or two or three few business, that's not good for the people because then they have less decisions to be able to make.
Wow. That sums it up beautifully. I mean, the two go hand in hand, but it's more about experience.
Yep.
It really is about experience because as a business colleague, you can say, look, this is an important thing that you need to pay attention to that's happening in legislation because this is how it's going to impact you. But then also from the political side, you're like, look, I have colleagues that I know that this kind of, you know, move will have this repercussion and this ripple effect. So being able to look at things from both sides, but also be entrenched in all the different communities that you're a part of, you know, helps you to informs you to be.
I'm going to unpack it and give some examples so that folks are moving with us. So I'm going to lay out education and then I'm going to lay out housing. So in reference to education, I realized that if young folks, if we do not make the investment as a state in our K through 12 system, we're not going to be competitive with other states. So like
100%.
This is a business decision when we're thinking about education and making sure that we make the appropriate. So I'm a very avid fighter for the blueprint for Maryland's future because I understand what's at risk and that we're not just competing with other states, we're competing on a global level. And we have to make sure that the output that we're putting out in the state of Maryland is matching or doing better from that standpoint. But then let's go to a housing. Let's go to like generational wealth and then protecting our seniors. One of the things is that I believe that if any person that gives 30 or 40 years of their life to any occupation, that they should be able to retire with dignity. So there are programs that I fight for to make sure that when folks want to age in place, when they want to be in their homes and they have some level of a big cost, a roof, a door, windows, things of that nature, we should be there to be able to help them. That's important. But equally as important is thinking about what does that neighborhood look like, especially the ones with high vacancy. So we've been making that investment in neighborhoods like the 4x4, Johnson Square, Bel Air, Edison, but thinking about it from a home ownership standpoint. Like, folks, we could go in there and create and exacerbate the problem that already exists. And nothing to say that there's anything wrong with renting, but if a person wants to be a homeowner, they want that opportunity, and we can make sure that we cover some level of the appraisal gap that exists in these high concentration of vacancy areas. And as we're directing resources in those neighborhoods, say you have to take in consideration home ownership, and partner with organizations like Habitat for Humanity, St. Ambrose, those that are on the right side of history, and thinking about like how do you create generational wealth and make sure that we're breaking down systems instead of building up systems. Those are things that I think about when we think about like a business decision with state tax dollars, but also making sure that we're taking care of people. I explain our young folks, I explained our seasoned folks, and I also explained those folks in the middle that may be trying to achieve some level of generational wealth. And generational wealth is just being able to leave a home for your child.
Yep.
You can work all your life, but at the end of the day, if you left them that home, you know what? They're ahead of you.
Yeah.
You did better than what was left to them, to you. They're going to do better than what was left to you, and you did your job.
Wow. I mean, that, yeah, I have no words. And that don't happen very often.
Yeah.
People that know me know that Angela doesn't struggle for words very often, but I mean, you hit the nail on the head, and those are key things that are so important. And you know, we try to be in alignment with those things as well. And aging in place is a big thing we do under CMAG Health, adding the technology to help people to be able to age in place and, you know, and monitor people's safety in home, and so that, you know, they can stay in their homes, and making those modifications and all those different things. So what you're talking about really speaks to the work that we do as well. And, you know, it's absolutely amazing. So I want to wrap with, you know, just one final question. And, you know, Baltimore is very near and dear to you, obviously. You know, I was born and raised in Baltimore as well. And now that you're on the state level and looking at things, but also still very focused on Baltimore, like, where do you see us as a state and or Baltimore, you know, or where would you like to see us in the next, you know, 5-10 years, you know? And people, and I know that's a heavy question because there's so many things that are happening and moves that are happening in a different way. And I'm trying very hard to choose my words correctly, because I don't want to, you know, I don't want to impart any of my own personal biases or anything like that. But, you know, things are different, right? They, like, the political space is moving different.
Right.
And being in a political position, being an elected official, you know, I can only imagine how heavy that is. And so I'm just curious to know, like, what do you see for us as a state or us as a city moving in this next 10 years or so, understanding that things are a little bit volatile because we just don't know some of the larger picture moves that may or may not be happening. But I just would like to know, like, what are your thoughts about that?
So I just want to say, like, I feel real good about the city right now. Angela, it's been a long time. Like, I just feel like we've been foundation setting for a long time to get to the moment that we sit in today.
Yeah.
But what do I mean by something like that? This is a moment where I watch my mayor give the State of the City address. And there was a visual behind him of a list that we did not make. And there was a list of him behind that we did not make in reference to fatal shootings, violent crime, homicides within our city. And this is something that we've been working to tackle so hard, but to be able to be in this moment and to be able to put one foot in front of each other and then just keep going. So public safety is going in the right direction is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
There's a significant amount of investment to go into decreasing vacancy in the city. That's happening with my governor, Wes Moore, in partnership with my mayor, Brandon Scott, and all of us as city council, House of Delegate members, Maryland State Senate, collectively working together to increase the population, but more importantly, decrease vacancy in our city. Education. I got 4 young scholars, all go to public school. And what happens is public school where we want it to be? No. Do we know what it's supposed to look like? Right now, we're actually stabilizing. You're seeing some of the trends go in the right direction. And I'm happy because of that, because I worked exceptionally hard to get this right. So for the city of Baltimore, in the moment that we stand in, I'm very proud. I'm very proud. And what happens is we need to figure out, because we're going through some very tough moments with our federal government. And what happens is these impacts are going to trickle down to the state level and then come down to the local level. And over the next couple years, what we're going to find is that this is the moment. This is the moment where true leadership has to step up. It has no choice, because we're going to have to understand what are our values, and we cannot have 100 values. We're not going to have the luxury of having 50 values, 50 priorities, things of that nature. So figuring out, like, what is the North Star of our values? What are our priorities that we have and want to set as a state? And be very clear about that and shape that direction, because the choices are going to be very hard. Some things are going to get cut. Some things are going to get cut. And what happens is, as we saw the Medicaid implications, as we saw the SNAP implications, we're going to have to go into this next legislative session, have hard conversations with all of our partners, all of our thought partners, and figure out what our values and our priorities are. I'm ready for this task. I feel like I'm ready for this moment, and I'm going to try my best to fight as hard as I can for my people, for my city, and for my state, to make sure that we hold on to values.
Dude, Again, I very rarely lost for words. And the thing about it is, anybody that knows you and has worked with you knows that that's not some kind of stump speech. That is truly how you feel. And if we can't get in alignment with our values and focus in on what's super, super important, because that's what's going to help us to make those hard decisions, because the hard decisions are coming.
They're coming.
There's no getting around it. They are coming. But if we can't get in alignment with those values, because that's going to be the thing, you know, and that's where that business understanding comes in. And you talked about the business decisions, because legislative decisions are business decisions. You are making, you know, if you think about it, the government is a business structure in that they have a budget and they need to allot and allocate the budget to certain things, and certain things are going to go through, certain things can't, all those kinds of things. And so understanding from that perspective that there are changes and there are things that are coming down the pike, and we are going to have to make some of those decisions. But I agree with you. You know, like I said, I was born and raised in Baltimore. I love the city. I don't live in the city anymore. I'm just being transparent. I live in Baltimore County, so I'm still, you know, but
it's a region. We want Baltimore.
I'm a part of it.
Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah.
But I am super, super proud of what, you know, and I feel like I've been able to sort of sit on the sidelines, and I had an opportunity to meet you when you were, you know, a freshman delegate. I had an opportunity to meet Mayor Scott when he was city council, and, you know, and seeing what you all are doing on a large level, but still staying focused on the city and still being your true selves. It's phenomenal. And I appreciate you. I appreciate all the work that you're doing
Vice versa.
on a legislative level, but also just in the community. It means the world to those of us that are watching you move. And going back to what we talked about earlier, like watching, you know, not because you say, hey, Angela, I'm doing this, you know, but literally motivated by just simply watching you move. And it's clear that you are very intentional and purposeful in how you move, because you know people are watching. And it is so clear. And so, you know, and I appreciate you. I appreciate you taking your morning to sit down and talk to me. I am so super excited about it. I cannot thank you enough.
Thank you.
Again, I'm so excited about the book. It's coming out officially on
September
the 30th.
Yep,
Yes.
September 30th, big day.
You can pre-order.
Now.
You can pre-order right now. It's even available on Amazon.
Everywhere you buy a book.
Everywhere you buy a book. I have my copy. I have 3 copies, in fact. So I'm going to be coming so I can get mine signed. I'm going to be finding you. But, you know, so you can pre-order. You can, you know, so with Amazon, I pre-order. So I know on the 30th, I have my copy. I want to be on social media with a big cheesy grin, like, look, I got it. But again, I'm excited to be able to share the story with other people.
Thank you.
And share the story with other young people and grown folks, because grown folks ain't nothing but old people,
right.
Young people with
apprenticeships don't have an age limit.
No,
it doesn't. I've had someone that was in my class that was 50 years of age, did a second career. That was the second career.
There you go.
So just making sure that we can have that subset of information, that knowledge capture, share it with folks so that they can make informed decisions.
Well, again, thank you so much for your time. This
Thank you
has
for
been
the
an
opportunity.
absolutely such a pleasure. And everybody, thank you for listening. Impact Innovations, this has just been an amazing, amazing time this morning. So thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Thank you for listening. Join us next time for more Impact Innovation.